The Key Challenge from Sarah in La La Land. I can remember back when I was a very small child having a whole bunch of keys on a ring that I used to play with. Now, I had a wild imagination between my G.I. Joes who actually talked when you pulled the string, because back in the day, that's how G.I. Joes were. You pull that little string and they said a whole bunch of different preset phrases. Those are my favorites. Not because they were Army or Navy or Marines or whatever they were, but because they were dolls that talked. And I was raised in an unconventional household where dolls were not just something little girls played with. I enjoyed my G.I. Joes. But besides the G.I. Joes, my favorite toy was a ring loaded with old, unused, discarded keys that my grandparents had put together for me and just given me, allowing me to use my imagination. Because see, back then, when I was a small child, your imagination was your main toy. It was the main thing you used to play. Nowadays, kids have Xbox and tablets and Kindles and talking robots and cell phones, and they never ever hardly go outside the house to have fun. I would take this ring of keys of all shapes and sizes, and I would go out in the backyard or the side yard or even sometimes the front yard, and I would play. And these keys were the key, excuse the pun, to my adventures. I had a story for each key, believe it or not. There had to be 65, 70 keys on this ring. It was one of these gigantic rings, the size of a saucer almost, that my grandparents had gotten from somewhere, and they took the time to load it up with all types of keys. Different shapes, different sizes. I mean, sometimes I could go a month just going through the keys and having an adventure in my mind. But there was one particular key on this ring that sort of got my attention more than the others. It was what we call today a skeleton key. Back then, I didn't know what a skeleton key was. I thought of it as a jailhouse key, because in all the old movies I watched in black and white on TV, whenever somebody was in jail, the jailer always carried a ring of keys that looked exactly like this key. It was a great big ring, the same size as my ring, but it only had like 2 or 3 keys on it. They all looked the same, like this skeleton key that you see in the picture here. It was strange. But the key grabbed my imagination. It just held me for some reason, because it was nothing like the other keys. It was totally different. Stood out. And when you're a child, your imagination is piqued by things that are different. And this key was, quote unquote, not like the others. So I played with this particular key a whole lot more than the other keys. And there was a chest. You know, they call them foot lockers now, but back then they were chests. And this was an elaborate chest down in the basement of our home. It was long and big, and it was made out of cedar wood, I later found out. And it had these, I don't know what you call them, rivets. And the rivets were bright yellow, which I later found out to be brass. And where you put the key in to turn the lock was a big brass plate-like mechanism. And I used to imagine that this key would fit that, and inside would be a buried pirate's treasure. Jewels and gold and coins. You know that stuff you see on the TV pirate films. Now, little did I know, because I was too young to actually insert the key into the lock and turn it to unlock the chest, but little did I know at that young age that that key that my grandparents had put on that ring of keys was exactly what that chest in the basement needed. Because that key fit that lock in that chest. It opened it. Now, of course, I didn't learn this until 23 years later, when I happened to be 30 years old, because when I was doing all this exciting adventure stuff with these big ring of keys, I was 7 years old. 23 years later, on my 30th year of being on Earth, I found out that that key fit that chest. And strictly by accident. I had returned home from the military. I had gone off to college. I had gone off to culinary school. I was a chef. I was cooking up meals all over the planet, making great money, coming home to visit my grandparents whenever I could. And on one of these trips home, my grandparents were sitting down talking to me about things, and lo and behold, I looked up on the mantle, and there was this ring of keys. I hadn't seen this ring of keys in 20 years. I jumped up, ran to the mantle, grabbed the ring of keys, and it was just as I had remembered it. Exactly as I had remembered it. All the keys were there in place from my childhood, even that skeleton key. And it was amazing to me. I mean, I stood there transfixed. The keys of my childhood, my Xbox, my tablet, my cell phone was right here in my hand. I was amazed. So we talked for a couple of hours more before they went to bed, and I decided, hey, I wonder if that old chest is still down in the basement, because lo and behold, that chest was one of the things we talked about at that homecoming dinner, right before I looked up and saw the keys. Curiosity is a very strong thing, you know. You can't shake it. When you become curious about something, if you don't kill the curiosity, then it becomes an obsession. Now, I hadn't thought about these keys for years, and I never really thought much about the chest in the basement. It's just one of those things your grandparents have down in the basement that you never even think about a second time. My grandparents had a Singer sewing machine that looked like it was back from the 1600s. And my grandmother would sometimes still use it when I was a kid. We had a washing machine that had the old wood ringers down there. She still used that when I was a kid. That basement was a historic place of relics. I used to play down there from time to time. But it hit me as I sat at the kitchen table, because, let's face it, in my grandparents' house, the dining room table was rarely used, but that kitchen table, that was the community center of the house. While sitting at this kitchen table, I got a bug up my butt about that chest. I had never opened it, had never really thought about opening it, but here I sat on this quiet, chilly, moonlit night with the key in my hand from my childhood, and the thought of that chest down in the basement. And you know it. I don't even have to say it. You already know it. Yes, I climbed down those back stairs to that basement, opened that basement door, turned on the lights, and there was everything exactly like it was 20 years ago. Washing machine sitting in the corner with the wooden ringers that you had to turn by hand. There was no such thing as a spin cycle. Your hand and arm was the spin cycle. The furnace that had been down there for centuries, that you put wood in, that was no longer being used, but still there. And that chest. Only now the chest was covered with a great big fancy multicolored quilt. The quilt looked beautiful, like it had been made yesterday, but I know it had been years since my grandmother had given up her quilting duties. I walked over to the chest, and for some reason, I didn't feel excitement like you would think, you know. It's normal for somebody to feel excited to open up a chest, right? I knew the key would fit. Don't ask me how I knew, because I don't have an answer, but I knew it would fit. But I knew what I found inside the chest would not bring me joy. I folded the quilt, which later would be left to me by my grandmother when she passed, which I still have today. I folded the quilt real nice, laid it in an old rocking chair that was down there. I got down on my knees in all that dust and dirt in front of the chest and found the skeleton key. I inserted it. It slid in like it was a brand new lock and key mechanism. Turned it to the left and turned it back to the right, because for some reason that's how those old chests worked. I know this because I'd come across quite a few old chests in my lifetime since leaving home. I sort of started collecting them and filling them with books or using them as tables. But this one opened smoothly without so much as a catch. I lifted the top, and on this particular old chest, the top of the chest was secured to the bottom by hinges in the back, but it also had some leather straps on each side that would hold it in place once you raised it, so it wouldn't go all the way back. Once the chest top was extended and open, I looked down inside, and there were photographs, pictures, images of slaves. I couldn't move. I was stunned. I was stuck in that position. And I don't know how long I was there. But there were hundreds of photographs, hundreds of images of slaves from what I imagined to be the South of the United States of America. There were cotton fields with groups of slaves standing there, some working, some standing posing for the camera, and there were little kids running all around. These were images of all sorts of scenes from the slave era. The big house, the slave masters, or those people I assumed to be slave masters because they were Caucasian. And there were just so many Negroes, all shapes, all sizes, all wearing clothes, tattered clothes, no shirts, torn pants, barefoot, shoes that clearly didn't fit, all right there in black and white. Hundreds of photos. I must have spent the next 3 nights down in that basement looking at those images once my grandparents had gone to bed. Just photos. No explanation, nothing written on the back, no books, no maps, no words, just images. And I had the key to this treasure chest for decades. And it was something that I thought about for years after. This treasure chest of these images in this basement that I lived in all my youth. And I never knew the actual treasure this chest held. I never once knew this skeleton key that I played with as a child was really a key to a vast treasure of memories, mementos, images, faces, people, human beings who lived on this earth long before me. People who toiled, people who were mistreated, misused, abused, tortured, stolen from their homeland and brought to America to work as slaves. History, real Negro history in this chest, of which I had the key. Think about that impact on yourself. You hold the key to an actual treasure chest of history. The key. I guess that'll be the end of this story, of this challenge. And I want to thank Miss Sarah in La La Land for all her great challenges. I'm sure there are going to be many more to come, and I hope I have enough talent and enough skill to participate in those challenges. Thank you, Miss Sarah. This has been a pleasure, and since I'm not a writer, I found a way that I can do these challenges without sitting my lazy ass down and typing. Once again, thank you, Miss Sarah. You guys should visit her blog, Sarah in La La Land. Goodbye.